We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Sunday. We're in the middle of the weekend, but most importantly, it is Mother's Day. So, to all the mothers, and I know we have a number of them out there in the audience, happy Mother's Day to you. Nothing more important than a mother. Now, I've had the misfortune that my mother passed away in 2010. It was a sad time, and she was a wonderful lady, and I miss her immensely. But there's a lot of people out there that count on mothers. My wife's a mother, and she's a real good mother too. Um, so happy Mother's Day. I hope it's a wonderful day. I hope that your children recognize the value and importance of having a good mom. And I hope they do something. Take you to brunch, buy you flowers, whatever it is. Really, when it comes down to it, it's just a matter of them acknowledging and appreciating all that you've gone through. And I got to tell you, when you become a parent, you just get kind of thrown into the fire, as it will, or as it were, and you have to do what you have to do at the time. And it doesn't seem as difficult because it just becomes your daily chores. But then as you get older and your kids grow up and they start having kids, you look back and you go, how the fuck did I do that? How did I juggle all those things I needed to do? How did I afford all those things? In retrospect, being a parent is a tough job. It's hard. And it's probably hardest for the mom. I know in my family, mom was kind of and I'm talking about my wife and I, my two sons. My wife was kind of the disciplinarian. I was like a third child because we'd get into shit together and mom would get mad and she'd straighten our shit out. I mean, of course, I had dad duties, and I think I did a fair enough job. Proof is in the pudding. How did the kids turn out? They turned out fine. They're intelligent and decent and productive. So I did my fucking job. And that's the one thing that I was talking to my wife about too. I said, and you go through your whole life and you want certain jobs, you want to make certain amounts of money, you want to get this education. If you ever wonder if you've been successful in life, being a parent is one thing that you will find out, presumably, before you die. You spend 18 years cultivating and raising these children. And if at the end the kids come out and they're normal and they're getting jobs and having families of their own, if you can't say anything else, you can certainly say, I was successful as a parent. Now, not everybody uh, is the same kind of parent. All we can do is kind of guide them along and teach them as they go, and hopefully they can leave the nest and be productive and decent folks. If you've done that, you've had an accomplishment, and that's something we should be able to be proud of. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of who I married because I'm a much better parent because of her. I probably would have been a worse parent, but anyway, happy Mother's Day. I hope you have a great day. And I appreciate you taking the time on this special day to actually listen to this show. Unless, of course, you left it for Tuesday or Monday and just took a day off. I don't blame you for that. If you do that, that's fine. Anyway, we're going to get into the show, and we have one email. It's been a long time since we've only had one email, but that's fine. One email, 20 emails, it doesn't make a difference. I'm just happy people want to participate. And if you're in the audience and want to participate, and I encourage it, you can send me an email at rationalboomer@gmail.com. Now, if you're really brave and you want to be on the show, you can do that too by sending me an email at that same email address, rationalboomer@gmail.com. Say, hey, I'd like to be on the show. And then we'll work it out from there and figure out what day, what time works best for you. I've got a couple of people in the wings. Alona was supposed to be on last week. We weren't able to work it out, so I'm hoping we can set that up this week. There's a few others too. So we've got a number of people in the wings ready to go. And I'm sure you'll be looking forward to that. I know I am. All right. The first and only email of the day comes from Jace. Since we're talking about listeners that have been guests on the show, Jace has been a guest on the show a few times, and he was on just this past week, not so long ago. And he sends us an email. He says, "Hey, Mike, welcome back. Thanks again for having me on the show. It's always great to be on. Was reading there are rumors that Nikki Haley is being considered to be Trump's VP pick. While she's definitely an upgrade from a puppy killer, I'm not sure she wants to get in bed with the soon to be felon. And those voters are not for Haley as much as against Trump. Just another story for media to blow out of proportion. And Don the Con heard the ramblings and had to post she is not in consideration, which means she is." Yeah, you're probably right. "I'm okay with these so-called stories and pro-Trump polls. Keep them going. Just more motivations for Dems, independents, women, and never-Trumpers to vote against him. I'm more confident Joe and the Dems win in November bigly." And now Republicans are mad Biden may be delaying weapons to Israel, but same ones sat on Ukraine aid for how long? Trump kisses Putin's ass so hard, Putin speaks Russian with a New York accent. Till next time, your buddy from Texas, Jace. That's an interesting thing to consider. The idea that Nikki Haley would be Donald Trump's choice for VP. Now, that would actually be a good choice for Donald Trump, only because the way these primaries have been going. She's picking up 15, 20, 25% of the vote, and she's not even on the ballot, for Christ's sake. Donald Trump can't afford to lose 15 or 20% of the Republican Party. So if he could pick that number up by adding Nikki Haley, that would make sense. However, there's a couple of problems. Donald Trump doesn't do the smart thing. He just doubles down and triples down and fails every fucking time. And he's got a bit of a problem with Nikki Haley. Some of the things she said, he's told her followers that he doesn't want them because they have the audacity to follow Nikki Haley. And I'll be honest with you, at this point, Nikki Haley's out of the primary race, but I think she still got in her head, this fucker ain't going to make it. And when he doesn't make it, I'm going to pop up and have a shot. I don't think she'd be in that same position if she was vice president. And I have to agree with Jace. I don't think that she has any interest in being Donald Trump's vice presidential candidate. And I think she knows that Donald Trump doesn't have any interest in her. So she's not going to appear like she's begging. She's going to lay back. And when Donald Trump keels over, goes to jail, or whatever the fuck's going to happen, she's going to pop her head up and try to grab the nomination. Now, I see a problem with that, of course. Nikki has some detrimental things to her that would stop her from being a Republican candidate for president. First of all, she's a woman. Second of all, she's of Indian descent. And when I say Indian, I'm talking about East Indian. Her parents weren't born in this country. And the fact that she's said some negative things about Donald Trump, well, that's a bridge too far for the MAGA fucks, and nobody's ever going to vote for her amongst the Trump MAGA people. So while it would make sense to Donald Trump to bring her on board, I don't think he will, because I think he's dislikes her. He doesn't like anybody that's in competition with him or anybody that's going to try to hurt his chances at doing anything. This seems like a logical match, but I think honestly, Nikki is just going to fucking lay back and wait for something bad to happen to Donald Trump. All right. We got some stuff to talk about with Trump, but let's talk about the Supreme Court, specifically Justice Clarence Thomas. Now, of course, Thomas has found himself under scrutiny over his judicial decisions and accepting lavish gifts from a billionaire Republican. Now, he was speaking in front of a judicial conference in Alabama, of all places. And he was whining and crying and bitching and moaning and pleading victimism for him and his wife. He was talking about all the noise around him and all the media and all the people that We're looking for some kind of integrity with the Supreme Court, but unfortunately, Clarence Thomas doesn't help that cause at all. And this is what he said. He said, there's certainly a lot of negativity in our lives, my wife and I, over the last few years, but we choose not to focus on it. I'm sure he thinks he's above it all. And that's a quote coming from the New York Times. Thomas is saying Friday, he said this Friday at a judicial conference in Alabama, as I mentioned. Now, staunch conservative Thomas, the longest serving justice on the court, has been embroiled. And you know this, the controversy since it emerged last year, how he got all kinds of sugar daddy treats from Harlan Crow, the billionaire. And he's just been getting a lot of heat. But here's the thing. He has the audacity to say that all this stuff coming out about him are lies. Really? Really, Clarence? Lies? You mean like the lies that suggest your wife was part and parcel in facilitating the insurrection on this country on January 6, 2021? That's a lie? I beg to differ. There's video evidence, there's audio evidence, there's document evidence, there's people talking about what your wife was doing, and she was involved in it. She was in the thick of it. So I don't see the lie there. But then there's the lie about you getting gifts. Well, all I know, we've seen video of you driving in your $275,000 RV that you didn't pay for. So I don't see well, I do see where the lies are. There are lies, but it's not what you're portraying, Clarence Thomas. The only motherfuckers that are lying are you and your wife. And you know what? We're fucking sick of it. We are absolutely sick of it. And come January, when the Democrats take over, get yourself ready, because we're going to check you and your wife. And you may not be in the position you are in very long, or certainly not have the power you do have currently. Now, he said this, you don't get to prevent people from doing horrible things or saying horrible things, the justice was quoted as saying. But one, you have to understand and accept the fact that they can't change you unless you permit that, or unless the DOJ stops you from doing this shit. We need to change you, Clarence. See, this is where the problem is. You think you're doing everything right. You think you're just fine. But grifting billionaires to sell influence, that's illegal, Clarence. And I hate to imagine why I have to tell a Supreme Court justice that that is illegal. You're a corrupt criminal. Your wife is an insurrectionist and a criminal in her own right. That needs to be addressed. That's where the truth needs to be told. And Clarence, I think it's coming. Now, according to ProPublica investigation published last year, 75-year-old Thomas went on one trip to Indonesia paid for by Crow that alone was likely worth $500,000. He also joined Crow, whose friendship with the justice, the New York Times in 2011 called unusual and ethically sensitive, for trips to an exclusive all-male wilderness resort in California and to properties in Texas and New York State over the past 2 decades. Now, I just like the term of that, an exclusive all-male wilderness resort in California. Have you ever heard of an all-male wilderness resort? That sounds kind of sketchy. That sounds kind of weird. Clarence, you just made this shit weird. Crow told ProPublica that his gifts to Thomas were no different from the hospitality we have extended to our many other dear friends, and that the two had never discussed pending cases. Well, we know that's bullshit. Thomas, who was nominated for the court in 91 after a confirmation process in which he was accused of sexual harassment by a former aide, joined the majority of the judges who ruled to overturn abortion. You remember that back in 91, some of you old heads out there. Yeah, he was alleged to sexually harass Anita Hill. You remember that? Now, that was a horrible story that was told by Anita Hill. And now, if Anita Hill was this crazy woman just coming up with shit trying to make money. That would be one thing, but she was a pretty serious, straightforward lawyer. She was smart. And I'll tell you this right now, times were different back in 91. I would tell you if that hearing happened today, Clarence Thomas would never be confirmed as a Supreme Court justice. Just wouldn't fucking happen. But back in the day, we had the old boy network and they just shoved that shit through as they tend to do. Republicans, that is. So Clarence Thomas has had it coming for some time. And it's sad to think that it takes 35 years to get there. But whatever it takes, we need to get it done. This guy is a cancer in the Supreme Court, as well as Alito, as well as Kavanaugh, uh, as well as Gorsuch and Coney Barry. These are all incompetent fucks, shouldn't be in the Supreme Court. And I don't know how exactly they fix it. There are a number of options. But once Joe Biden has the House and the Senate, that needs to be one of the first things that they contend with, because that is a big problem. Without a legitimate Supreme Court, we have a tough time maintaining democracy. And isn't what this is all about. Now, he went further than his colleagues, saying the conservative dominated court should also examine its rulings on contraceptions and same sex marriage. Remember when they said, well, yeah, we're overturning Roe v. Wade, but that doesn't have anything to do with contraception or LGBTQ. Fuck, it doesn't. And he's the one that said it out loud. So we need to look at Clarence Thomas. And if he wants to whine and cry, go ahead. But nobody's feeling sorry for you at this point, motherfucker. All right. So Donnie Trump is on the campaign trail, in between stints on trial and Barron Trump's graduation, which he's apparently not going to. Anyway, Donald Trump loves to brag about the huge size of his political rallies. But on Saturday, a reporter spotted the ex-president's supporters leaving the event while he was still speaking. Well, yeah, he speaks for 3 fucking hours and says the same thing over and over again. Now, Trump over the weekend spoke in New Jersey, which most polls show is solidly behind the current president, Joe Biden. After the event, the former president was criticized for making a mistake about China and for apparently slurring his speech. But Joe Biden is the one that's got problems, right? Trump spent a good portion of his speech bragging about the size of the crowd, even insisting news cameras turn to face the crowd to show how many people attended the event. Now, see, that's the thing about Donald Trump. He is so delusional, so twisted. He doesn't care about the content. He doesn't care about the quality of the people in the crowd. It's just really important to him to have the biggest crowd. Unfortunately, he doesn't have the biggest crowd. But a reporter from the Philadelphia Inquirer noticed that prior to Trump being finished with his speech, his own fans started departing. That seems to be a common thread. We've seen this for some time in Donald Trump's speeches. The intellectual level of people that will go to these rallies isn't great. And I suspect their attention spans are that of a gnat. So when they stand there and they hear what Donald Trump has to say, the same thing over and over again, eventually, um, they're thinking to themselves, well, this is great. This is boring, but I got to get a beer or get home to my cousin wife. One thing or another, they can't keep focused on it. And who could? It's all the same bullshit. Trump is still speaking, but the crowd has been thinning. People have been walking out back to the boardwalk. That was written by Aaliyah Schneider on Saturday. The back section of the crowd is noticeably smaller as people continue to leave while Trump is still speaking. Schneider, who provided video evidence of her observation, excuse me, also included the ex-president's response. Trump just said he hasn't noticed anybody leaving. Well, of course not. Donnie's all about telling you shit that's the opposite of what's happening. She added people also left from the front seating section. Trump is speaking again after bringing others on stage with him, and the back section has largely emptied out. Reporter noted it's gotten cold with the sundown and the beach breeze. Donnie can't hold a crowd. I know it's a big deal to him to suggest that he's pulling the biggest crowds, but the fact of the matter is he isn't. It's just like the polls saying he's neck and neck with Donald Trump. Well, or with Joe Biden. Well, that's funny because the fundraising isn't even at all. Joe Biden is still out fundraising Donald Trump by 100%. He's doubling whatever Donald Trump is getting. And as I've said before, if Donald Trump really had that much support, wouldn't he have the same amount of money coming in as Joe Biden? I mean, that seems to make sense in spite of what the media will tell us, or the polls will tell us. If you got one, you got to have the other. And it just doesn't show up that way. That's why I tell people don't listen to the polls. So much we don't know about the polls, but fundraising, that's hard, cold, solid numbers. We can trust that because it has to be passed along to the election commission and then they release it. It's looked into. There is no fact checking. There is no certification of a poll per se. It's whoever owns the poll company can make the polls say whatever the fuck they want. And that's what they do. Now, what's funny is the most hot topic amongst the Republicans now is who is Donald Trump's vice presidential candidate going to be? I always laugh about that because I know Donald Trump is not going to win the election if he is even the nominee. And these people are fighting like cats and dogs to be the vice presidential candidate to Donald Trump, who's going to fucking lose. I think they're all kind of in the same mindset as Nikki Haley, that if I'm the vice president and when Donald Trump takes his shit, then I'll just emerge as the presidential candidate. Well, good luck with that because you're not going to fucking win either. Donald Trump's last vice president was called up to defend the Constitution and American democracy by refusing to overturn the results of an election. Then his boss turned against him, whipping up an angry mob of supporters so intensely that they constructed a gallows and chanted for him to be hanged. See, that's the criteria Donald Trump needs for a vice presidential candidate. Somebody who's unethical as a motherfucker. For as dumb as Pence is, he did the right thing. He did the only thing he could really do. But Donald Trump trying to pressure him to do something else. See, Donald Trump doesn't fucking care if it's legal or it's right, just as long as he wins. Now he's going to have to find somebody who is even more pliable and compliant than Mike Pence was. And you think that might be hard, but wait till you hear the list. Marco Rubio still wants the job. That kiss ass, flip flopping motherfucker. So do Senators J.D. Vance of Ohio. Who the fuck is he? He wrote a book, I think. And then there's Tim Scott of South Carolina. Now, he seems like the hottest prospect because that dude will walk up to Donald Trump, kiss his dirty diaper ass, and do anything he's told. He is an absolute sycophant. And yeah, he might be the best choice to do what Donald Trump wants to do. He's not going to bring him any votes because he's a black man in the Republican Party. And other than South Carolina, where's he going to get votes from? Now, the other one, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. Yeah, even after she talked about shooting the dog, she's still in the running. And then, of course, there's North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. Now, Doug Burgum is a one-dimensional, boring piece of shit who happens to be a billionaire and happens to be the governor of North Dakota. He was in the primary, didn't do shit. So why would you think he'd be a good vice presidential candidate? Well, he'll probably do whatever Donald Trump wants as well. He's compliant. He's a sycophant. But I still think it's funny that people are worried about who his vice presidential candidate is going to be, because I think it's going to be an utter failure for whoever jumps in the mix, whoever actually accepts it. Now, the reason is, why do they want to be vice president? Well, because if you're an ambitious Republican with an eye on higher office, becoming Donald Trump's vice presidential running mate could be the quickest path to the Oval Office. Yeah, no. Whoever Trump picks to join his ticket will become the immediate favorite to become the next GOP presidential standard bearer, whether the 77-year-old ex-president wins in November or not. That's why so many Republicans are not so secretly vying for the position, with appearances at Trump's campaign events and on cable news programs in recent weeks, seemingly hoping to outdo each other on who can be the most obsequious MAGA messenger. Now, see, I disagree with this whole concept. They're thinking, okay, I'll be Donald Trump's VP. Whether I win or lose, I'll be the top man on the totem pole, so to speak. And then come 2028, I'll be the nominee. What they're failing to understand is that once we get done with the 2024 election and the Republicans get their asses kicked, what's going to actually happen with the Republican Party? They're going to have to step back and say, oh, fuck, what do we do now? They're going to change everything. And they're going to, the last thing they're going to want to have is anybody even closely attached to Donald Trump, because Donald Trump represents the destruction and the losses in the Republican Party. Once we get through 2024, and it is a blue wave, and I'm sure it will be, they don't want anything to do with Donald Trump. The closer you were standing to Donald Trump, the less valuable you will be to the Republican Party. So if you think you're going to be the nominee in 2028, I would think again, it's not going to go well. Now, winning Trump's affection often requires unquestionable loyalty. And that means defending even his most shocking actions, including his unprecedented effort to overturn the election he lost, his vow to pardon rioters who stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, his 88 felony charges, and his personal conduct, such as an alleged extramarital affair with an adult film star. Well, it's not a lot different than Tim Scott hiring an actress to play his girlfriend. Besides, it's not like they'll end up in the same position as former Vice President Mike Pence, right? After all, Republicans who want the job say the Constitution limits presidents to serving 2 terms. An attempt by the incumbent to stay in power past 2028 is not going to be an issue for the next vice president, right? Rubio told HuffPost. No matter who's elected president now, they can't run again. Well, that's true. And I would say that's true with Joe Biden. But Donald Trump also talked about being a dictator, which would pretty much cancel real elections. And Donald Trump, if he were still ambulatory, would still try to go on and be president after 2028. I just don't think he can physically or emotionally make it. But yeah, that's not a good thing. Donald Trump will not be the president. So you might as well put that in your fucking back pocket. And then when you're his vice presidential candidate and everything falls to shit, then all you're going to do, instead of being the nominee in 2028, you will carry the stench, the stink of Donald Trump into eternity. So good luck with that. Now, Vance, meanwhile, said that what happened between Trump and Pence was a result of the political consequences of what happened at the time. I think Mike Pence and Donald Trump had a very strong disagreement. Yeah, one wanted to follow the law and one wanted to break the law. And Mike Pence, he's fundamentally just as never really on board with the underlying agenda because it was criminal. Vance also said he doubts that Pence's life was ever in danger. I think it's probably still in danger, dip fuck. Rubio and Vance's decision to downplay the threats to Pence, who said in March he could not support his former boss for president in 2024, are just the latest examples of efforts running mate contenders will go to prove their loyalty. I mean, Tim Scott was recently interviewed and he was talking about he wouldn't say that there was an insurrection. He wouldn't talk about whether they should pardon the people who were arrested. Tim Scott just sat there smiling that big smile, mostly gums and a few teeth, and he looked like a dipshit. I I don't understand how Tim Scott ever keeps a job. Now, keep in mind, Tim Scott was appointed to the senator's job by none other than Nikki Haley. And then he starts talking shit about Nikki Haley. Well, if you can't stand behind the person who put you in a position you should have never been in, how trustworthy are you? How fucking loyal are you? If this is the list of vice presidents candidates that Donald Trump has, if this is who he's going to pick, I think it's wonderful. I mean, Donald Trump doesn't have a chance in the world of winning anyway, but with these clowns, it's going to even make it worse. All right. We are going to take a quick pause, take a quick break, and we will be right back. So, Donald Trump's got all kinds of problems. He lost a couple lawsuits, one to New York, a couple to actually three lawsuits, one to New York and two to E. Jean Carroll. For that, he has been fined more than $500 million, more than $500 million. And of that, he's had to take out of his pocket $275 million and put it up in a bond, which is already the start to the punishment. People think that they put it in the bond and it's no punishment. Understand this: Donald Trump had to come out of his ass with either cash money and put it up for the bond. So he's got $275 million he cannot touch and is not likely to ever get back because he will lose the appeals. So you pull $270 million out of Donald Trump's ass, that is a problem. Then you throw in the fact that he's currently on trial for 34 felony charges, of which he's going to get hit and convicted with multiple felony charges. It could be 2, it could be 5, it could be 20. It doesn't matter. If he gets 1 or 2, he's fucking done. And people say, what do you mean he's done? Do you think the Republicans will kick him out? Do you think he'll drop out of shame? No, I don't. What I think is that Donald Trump is like Captain Queeg in the Kane Mutiny. He's starting to lose his shit. He's starting to get pushback from his own people. It's going to affect him emotionally, it's going to affect him physically, and he may not be able to continue. That's just a feeling I have. And again, understand, it's not me wishing that he wouldn't be the nominee. I really want him to be the nominee because he will be the easiest person for Joe Biden to beat. I mean, Joe Biden will beat any Republican, but Donald Trump, it would be just desserts to see him get his ass kicked and watch him flop around on the fucking deck like a trout. All right. Got all that shit going on. But there's more stuff coming. I mean, it's just like piling on with Donald Trump. Listen to these couple of things. Donald Trump's election campaign has been hit with a sex discrimination lawsuit involving fresh accusations that his lawyers violated federal law by attempting to hide settlement payments to women accusers. Interesting. These are his current lawyers. You smell some more sanctions coming? Oh, I think I do. Once this is all said and done, the question is, will there be any lawyers that represented Donald Trump that haven't either been disbarred or sanctioned? I highly doubt it. Now, the Federal Election Commission must investigate whether the campaign illegally attempted to hide settlement payments by routing them through third parties, according to a complaint filed by Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, or something called CREW. Well, that's interesting. That's the very thing he's on trial for currently. And he's got more of this happening, kind of proof that he's a habitual repeat offender. Now, the allegations of wrongdoing, first reported by the Daily Beast, stem from former Trump campaign employee A.J. Delgado, who gave a sworn declaration in her pending lawsuit against Trump that she was cut loose based on pregnancy discrimination. You remember this one. This is where Alina Habba got involved and kind of played this poor woman. Delgado, a former Trump 2016 camp aide, had grabbed widespread attention by accusing longtime Trump aide Jason Miller of engaging in a cycle of sexual coercion, rape, sexual assault, abuse, battery, sexual harassment, and sex trafficking. Now, have you ever seen Jason Miller on television? That's the only way this guy's getting sex is if he forces somebody because he is a fucking loser. He's a fucking potato. Delgado and Miller had an affair and has since long accused Miller of stiffing her on child support payments. She has also claimed discrimination because she lost her job during pregnancy. Now, according to Delgado's filing, she also accuses Trump attorney Mark Kasowitz of admitting the campaign selected to move settlements through a law firm to keep a payout back in 2017 in an effort to dodge federal disclosure laws that mandate campaigns identifying payments to receipts. Now, that's a nice way of saying fraud. Election interference, the very thing he's on trial for right now, and there's more, and it's coming. In other words, the payment would be routed through a middleman to hide the fact that the campaign had settled from the public and hide it from the public and the FEC, Delgado stated in a filing. I thus have direct personal experience with the defendant campaign hiding settlement payments to women, routing them through a middleman law firm, which to the public would only appear as a payment for legal services. Wow, that sounds so familiar. Again, a habitual criminal. She also suspects there is enough information and reason to believe that Trump campaign made payments, specifically $4.1 million that she claims flowed to Kasowitz's law firm over a 2-month period immediately following the November 2020 election. Now, all of those efforts were intended to keep secret from the public and the FEC more settlements with the women who raised complaints of gender discrimination, pregnancy discrimination, and sexual harassment. This is fucking fraud, okay? It's fraud, as simple as that. And we've got plenty of stuff going on with Donald Trump. That'll probably be put on the back burner, but it's basically piling on. And it just goes to show how Donald Trump is a habitual criminal. All right, that's not the only thing. Now, I think I talked about this here yesterday. Maybe I didn't. But Donald Trump recently made a controversial proposal to a gathering of oil executives and lobbyists at his Mar-a-Lago residence in Florida. What he said was, listen, man, he didn't say it that way. I just like to think he did. Listen, man, I'll give you you give me $1 billion in campaign cash. And in return, I'll just cancel all the regulations for oil companies. You guys can run roughshod, do whatever the fuck you want. Now, a lot of people heard that and they thought, well, that's another dumb thing that Donald Trump said. But the fact of the matter is that too is illegal. That too is going to catch the attention of the DOJ. And apparently it's gotten the attention of the U.S. Senate. Now it looks as if the U.S. Senate may launch an official inquiry into Donald Trump. That's according to the New Republic's Greg Sargent, who spoke to Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, like that dude, he's a Democrat from Rhode Island, about Trump's recent entreaty to the oil industry. Whitehouse said it was highly likely that the Senate Budget Committee would investigate the former president over his brazen offer. The phrase that instantly came to mind, this is Sheldon Whitehouse, the phrase that instantly came to mind as I was reading the story was quid pro quo. I think that's the essence of quid pro quo. Adding that he was also concerned about a series of proposed executive order oil lobbyists drafted by Trump and to have ready to sign on day one should he win a second term in November. Put those things together, and it starts to look mighty damn corrupt, said White House. Now, billionaire oil magnate Harold Hamm arranged the Mar-a-Lago event, which the Washington Post reported was designed to allow for the fossil fuel industry to be able to bring concerns over environmental regulations directly to Trump. Well, what's your point? He's not the president. He's not going to be the president. And even if you did give him a fucking $1 billion, he still wouldn't win the presidency. Now, at the meeting, Trump reportedly promised to overhaul President Joe Biden's policies relating to electric vehicles and wind energy. The contrast between the two candidates on climate policy could not be more stark. Biden has called global warming an existential threat. And over the last 3 years, his administration has finalized more than 100 new environmental regulations aimed at cutting air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, restricting toxic chemicals, and conserving public lands and waters. Now, we know by the way the weather trends are going these days, there's some shit going on. There's some shit that has to be looked at, and there's some shit that has to be fixed. Republicans don't care. Donald Trump doesn't care. Fucking oil industry doesn't care. How long has the oil industry, with all its power and all its money, how long has it obstructed or blocked the things we need to do as a country to perpetuate healthy people in this country? But the oil companies don't care. And Donald Trump has said, listen, man, I'll let you go rogue on this shit if you just give me $1 billion. Now, I don't think there's any risk of them giving him $1 billion because they'd have to be pretty sure he's going to win. And I think anybody looking at this intelligently could only be pretty sure that he's going to get his ass kicked. Now, in comparison, Trump has called climate change a hoax, just like COVID. Yeah, COVID was a hoax. 1 million people died, but it was, no big deal. The heat comes in, we'll be over it. And his administration, Donald Trump's administration, weakened or wiped out more than 125 environmental rules and policies over 4 years. Now, you can believe one or two things. There is a problem with climate change and certain things we can control, or it's just a fucking hoax. It's all bullshit. Let's not do anything. Let's just, you know, not working with climate change is like not changing the oil in your car. It'll go okay for a while, but eventually that motherfucker will seize up and you won't have a car anymore. White House, who chairs the budget committee, said Trump's proposal to oil executives was practically an invitation to ask more questions. He added that the inquiry would be hopefully shed light on the myriad ways in which industries like big oil exploit the campaign finance system and find ways to make the system more transparent and accountable. Like getting rid of Citizens United. This was brought on by the Republicans, and it pretty much allows big oil lobbyists and all this shit to do whatever the fuck they want, pour money into something so they can win elections, even though they don't give fuck all about this country and about the climate. Now, Noah Bookbinder, who is president of the anti-corruption watchdog group Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, said that while Trump's offer was technically illegal, there is still plenty of work to do in cleaning up the gray areas in federal campaign finance laws. Please tell me how that's fucking legal. I'll get rid of a bunch of stuff for you. You just give me $1 billion. See, this is what I dislike about Washington. We're supposed to have norms. We're supposed to have laws, but nobody wants to fucking enforce them. It's not really illegal. Well, then what is illegal? What the fuck is illegal? Jesus Christ. A bookbinder told Sargent there's a clear legislative purpose in determining what happened at the meeting. If this really constituted an attempt to link significant campaign contributions with specific policy promises, that suggests a huge loophole that needs to be closed. Yeah, you fucking think? There's a clear legislative purpose in determining what happened at the meeting, Bookbinder told Sargent. If this really constituted, I'm reading this again, because it's important. If this really constituted an attempt to link significant campaign contributions with specific policy promises, that suggests a huge loophole that needs to be closed. So, what are you saying? Are you saying because Donald Trump said it, it must be perfectly legal and there must be a loophole? Or maybe Donald Trump just stepped a little too fucking far and broke the law. That's not so hard to believe, given that he's on trial for 34 felony charges for fucking fraud and for interference in an election. Conversely, some of the executive orders the oil industry has prepared for Trump would undo the progress on climate Biden has made since taking office. Now, Politico reported that some of the orders would lift Biden's pause on new natural gas export permits, open up new protected federal lands for more oil drilling, and allow for more offshore oil drilling leases. Trump casting Biden as an opponent of big oil is somewhat confusing, given the United States has officially hit record high domestic oil production levels earlier this year, higher than when Donald Trump was in office. The U.S. Energy Information Administration found that in 2023, the U.S. produced 13 million barrels of oil per day on average, making the United States the world's largest oil producer. But Joe Biden closed down that oil line. I keep hearing that. It's absolutely fucking stupid. He didn't close down an oil line, and the line didn't even come into America. It went down to fucking Mexico or Canada, between Mexico and Canada. And the particular line that was stopped, Joe Biden didn't stop. The Supreme Court stopped it. And it wasn't even up and operating. So there was no loss in productivity. And besides that, it wasn't even going to move oil. It was going to move some cruder type of product through there. I've heard tar sand. I don't fucking know. You know, I talked about this one time on TikTok, and then Mr. Global comes on and talks shit about me. I'm not an oil expert. I don't give a fuck about oil. I do care about corruption and criminality in our in our country. You know, somebody like Mr. Global, everybody says, I like Mr. Global. And I know he's a smart guy. I don't listen to his shit because I'm not that attuned to the oil industry. We've got bigger problems right now. We can deal with the oil industry after we get rid of these obstructionist Republican motherfuckers. But my question to Mr. Global is this: you don't even fucking know me. You come on and you give me shit about something. I didn't even listen to it. I don't know what it is. But look, you want to call me out? Come on the fucking show. Call me out on the show. I'm happy to admit I'm wrong anytime I'm wrong. I'm not afraid of being wrong. See, that's the difference between me and some of these creators. They're afraid of being called out and being wrong. No, motherfucker. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'd rather be corrected. Obviously, rather be corrected. I mean, I'm wrong frequently with regards to my wife, and I'm corrected on a daily fucking basis. So this isn't new to me. This isn't hard for me. All right, let's move on. Author Mary Trump. She is a psychologist. I was corrected about that too, and I'm fine with that. I didn't know if she was a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Somebody came in the comments and said she's a psychologist. Cool. Now we know. She's also Donald Trump's niece and has made some observations about Donald Trump's behavior, and I think she's spot on with her observations. Now, Mary Trump claimed during an MSNBC interview that her uncle, former President Trump, would come out of prison a changed man. He ain't coming out of prison. If he goes in prison, we'll never see him again because he's 78 years old when he goes, 79 years old when he goes into prison, and he won't be out for a long while. He'll fucking die in prison if he ends up in prison. Now, Mary Trump joined MSNBC anchor Alex Witt for an interview on Saturday to discuss the recent development in Trump's New York trial. Trump's niece shared her thoughts on how Trump would handle being imprisoned if he is found in violation of his gag order. Oh, okay. She's talking about a gag order imprisonment. So we're talking a couple of days. Okay, I see where she's going now. Trump faces criminal charges for allegedly falsifying business documents regarding hush money payments during the 2016 election season. Moreover, the former president was given a gag order by Judge Juan Marchand to not attack witnesses. Now, Mary Trump told MSNBC anchor that she believes Trump would not be able to survive in prison without his phone and that he would come out a changed man. Now, Witt said, "What do you make of your uncle saying he'd be proud to go to jail over violations, potentially for Judge Marchand's gag order?" I mean, first of all, do you believe him? Would he be scared or would he be comfortable playing the martyr from a jail cell? And Mary Trump said, "I think that it's absurd for anybody to think that he would willingly go to jail for a night, even for an afternoon. Honestly, and hopefully, if he ever is sent to jail for breaking the gag order, which he's now done 11 times, 12 times actually, it's for real. It's not that he's going to some suite in some fancy hotel that's just guarded. He is there in his cell without his phone, just like any other American would be. He would definitely come out a changed man, and honestly, I just don't think he could handle it. He would love the martyrdom, but I don't believe for a second that he's willing to go to jail for real. No way." And I've said this before. So many people have come to me and said, "Oh, he just wants to go to jail." You know, maybe in a romantic way, in that delusional head of his, you might think, "I could go to jail and I could be a hero." I don't think he really wants to go to jail. And it's because of what I've said about bullies. Bullies say shit. Donald Trump says a lot of shit. He acts tough. But the moment he has pushback, the moment somebody comes at him, he fucking cowers and curls up in a ball in the corner. He might say, "Yeah, I'll go to jail," just like he might say, "Yeah, I'll testify." But when it comes down to nut cutting time, that motherfucker will not go to jail. And you can tell by what's happening now. He knows he's got a problem here, and for the longest time, he's been unhinged and said whatever he wants to say. He's not doing that so much anymore. He's being more careful. But I think the breaking point might be when Michael Cohen steps up on the witness stand on Monday. See, Michael Cohen's a lot like Donald Trump. He's a loudmouth, flapping his lips constantly. He's confrontational, and he will go after Trump on the stand. And Trump will have a hard time sitting there taking it. And Donald Trump will get whipped up and he'll say some shit. So I'm really looking forward to Monday period when Michael Cohen is on the stand. That might drive Donald Trump fucking crazy. And since we're on the topic of crazy, let's talk about Rudy Giuliani. He got pretty much unhinged Friday night after his radio show on WABC was canceled because he refused to stop falsely claiming that Donald Trump was cheated out of the presidency in 2020. You'd think that motherfucker would learn a lesson. He was sued to the tune of $148 million, which he can't pay, and he's still talking the same shit. I mean, even Fox learned a lesson after Dominion got 800 million out of them. They're a little more cautious, not completely cautious, but a little more cautious. Now, Giuliani announced his firing on Twitter or X or whatever the fuck, then immediately went on the offensive, going on multiple wild rants over several hours as he streams his America's Mayor podcast live on X. Giuliani repeatedly blamed Joe Biden for his firing and hurled a slew of insults and threats at him and his son, Hunter Biden. So somehow Joe Biden got him fired. You were the one that was fucking lying, but Joe Biden got you fired. Sounds a little like paranoia to me. In one moment that went viral in the clips on X, Giuliani waved his arms wildly as he seemed to act out fearfulness of newspapers and reporters to initially cover the news of Hunter Biden's laptop. "I mean, you were," said Giuliani before gesturing with flailing arms. And The Wall Street Journal, he said, wrapping his arms across his head as if in terror of the story. The Bidens don't realize who can really inflict atomic destruction to them. They are going to along just fine until Giuliani found the people in Ukraine. See what's going on here again? Bullying, threats, threats. But you know what? Joe Biden's not afraid of you, Rudy Giuliani. You've ended up to be a fucking joke. You were once America's mayor, and now you're just some fucking goofball with your hair dye running down the side of your face. Now, Giuliani said, I'm not even sure I knew what I was going to say yesterday. I just want to be free to tell people the truth. Well, you seem to have a problem with that. And you want to stop me, don't you? Yeah. The Democrat thing has something to do with it. And the fact that the Bidens are really zeroing in now on interference with the 2024 election. He goes on to say, I'm the one who revealed the hard drive. Oh, yeah, the hard drive with dick pics and nothing else on it. I spoke to the Post today and it did a nice young lady. I said to her, you didn't find the hard drive. I did. And I gave it to you. And I pretty much had to force you to do it, except for Miranda Devine and Levine and a few other people who had the guts to. I mean, you were. What evidence was gathered from that fucking hard drive? Did Joe Biden get indicted? Did Joe Biden get impeached? No, they can't even come up with a real fucking answer to the impeachment. This is the problem. You kept talking about the hard drive, but nothing ever came out of it. You see why we think you're goofy, Rudy? And he's trying to intimidate them by saying, "Oh, there's somebody out there that's going to get you. Just you wait." We've been hearing that term for fucking 7 years. Just you wait. We're going to take you down. Rudy Giuliani and Mike Lindell should do a podcast. Dipshits United. Giuliani said he was shaking them down like he's shaking Israel down right now. That's what gangsters do, and he's a gangster. It's 35 years of taking money. He began as a trailer trash little creep, taking little bits with his scummy little brothers, and now he's a world-class thief. Somehow, strangely, president of the United States, even though his family got 21 to 31 million from our biggest enemy, China. But here's the thing, Rudy. 7 years of you fucking around with this shit, or 5 years anyway, there's still no evidence. Where's the motherfucking evidence, Rudy? Giuliani went on to say, the hard drive. Remember that one, Joe? The one that hopefully will sink your little creep son? But you're the one that really should go down, not your son. You're the reason your son is like that. And you could go into a big psychological explanation for it. But if for the choice of you or your son going to jail, you're the guy that should go to jail. You're such a creepy father. You used him as a man. Well, some of the biggest criminals in the world. Giuliani also used X to declare war on WABC, urging his listeners to call the switchboard and demand free speech. I love how they talk about free speech. Free speech doesn't apply to the fucking media, you dipshit. You're a lawyer and you should know this. Free speech has to do with the government. If you're a media outlet, you can make choices as to what you want to put on your airwaves. God, is he that dumb, or does he think everybody who's listening to him is that dumb? Probably the latter, because the people listening to him and that support Rudy Giuliani are in fact truly dumb. Now, MAGA comrade Steve Bannon, who heads to jail soon for refusing to talk to Congress, denounced WABC as cowards and said he'll no longer appear as a guest. Oh my God. Steve Bannon won't be a guest on our show anymore. That is fucking horrible. And while we're talking about Steve Bannon, of course, a federal appeals court panel on Friday upheld the criminal conviction of Donald Trump's longtime BFF, Steve Bannon. The three-judge panel of U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit rejected Bannon's challenges. It was a fucking joke. challenges to his contempt of Congress conviction, for which he was sentenced in 2022. He's been fucking around for 2 years on this shit. But he's going to get 4 months in prison. He made the appeal. It didn't work. He may try to appeal to the Supreme Court. They aren't going to fuck with it. Nobody cares about Steve Bannon. Motherfucker's going to jail. You know what? If he had just gone to jail, done his 4 months, he'd be out by now and he wouldn't have to worry about it. But leave it to a fucking Republican. Let's push it off till tomorrow, the next day. Delay the inevitable. They're going to get you anyway, motherfucker. You might as well just get it done. Now, Bannon's attorneys didn't immediately respond to an email seeking comment. His lawyers could ask the full D.C. appeals court to hear the matter. Bannon was convicted 2 counts of contempt of Congress, one for refusing to sit for a deposition and the other for refusing to provide documents related to his involvement in Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Now, Bannon had all kinds of arguments for this, all of them bullshit, and the appeals court just said as much. Whether he'll try to take it to the full appeals court, I wouldn't be surprised if he does, but I'm sure the full appeals court will see it and go, yeah, nah, I think we're good. I don't think we're going to hear that. Steve Bannon, you're going to have to go to jail for 4 months. But that's the least of your problems, as I've said before. No question you were involved in the insurrection on January 6, 2021. And when those superseding indictments come out from Jack Smith after the election, guarantee you're going to be on that list. And you're going to be looking at a lot longer than 4 months. So I hope you got money for legal bills, because you're going to fucking need it. And then you're going to have to spend some time in years in prison. And you got that cute little podcast. Who's going to do the podcast while you're away? What other dumb fuck could you have fill in for you? Or maybe you'll do the podcast from prison. I'm sure they'll let you fucking do that. Anyway, we are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.